I think now we have 20 participants. So I believe we can start. So without any waste of time, we are going to request Mr. Malebana to open and welcome us in this workshop. Mr. Malebana.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Mr. Mojapelo, and good morning. Good morning to our LIS professionals, Liasa Limpopo Exco, Liasa Limpopo members, Liasa supporters, partners, and our sister branches, the LIS students, lecturers, departmental representatives, municipality representatives, and other representations from different institutions, including that of higher education. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We are gathered here today because Liasa Limpopo Exco set and saw it fit to prioritize capacity development in the LIS fraternity in the province and countrywide. It is the Exco's interest and wish to see ourselves continuously in articles, journals, and competing with other professionals in development stages. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here this morning because you responded to a call made by Liasa Limpopo. We continue to always appreciate your support. Whenever Liasa Limpopo calls, you immediately avail yourselves without hesitation. Today we meet again after we have celebrated Librarians Day in an effort by the Exco to reach out and be a caterpillar of development in LIS sector. We are once more gathered here today for a sole purpose of capacitating ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, LIS professionals, students, lecturers, and larger population of our sector, welcome to the Liasa Limpopo Basic Research Methodology Workshop. You are mostly welcome. You are encouraged to participate without intimidations. This is the platform that is created for you to be capacitated and informed. We continue to be available whenever clarity is needed. Please interact with us also on our social media platform, on our Facebook page, which is Liasa Limpopo branch. Once again, you are welcome and protected in this platform. Please do enjoy the session with us. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, our PRO, Mr. Malebana. Thank you very much for welcoming us in this workshop. So we are now going to also request Mr. Malebana again to introduce to us the speaker of the day, who will be presenting about basic research methodology. So Dr. Malebana, can you kindly introduce us to Dr. Buluka? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Program Director. Our treasury in the Liasa Limpopo branch, Mr. Mojapelo. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we are gathered here today because, as you saw on our posters in Liasa Limpopo branch page and the posters that was circulating, where we made a call to say, come and join us to this basic research methodology workshop, which we are hosting here today. This workshop will be facilitated by none other by our own doctor, whom she obtained her PhD in information science at the University of South Africa in 2022. She obtained her Master of Arts in Information Science degree at UNISA. She did her honors included degree in Information Studies at University of Limpopo. She presents papers at local and international conferences. She published articles in peer-reviewed journals in South Africa. She is constantly reviewing papers from accredited local and international journals. She is involved in community engagement projects that are aimed at addressing illiteracy levels in rural communities through the establishment of reading clubs. She is also serving as Library and Information Association of South Africa, LIASA, Limpopo branch, as our secretary. She worked for a private sector, government sector, and 2 public universities in South Africa, namely University of Limpopo, University of Zululand, and now she is currently with UNISA in the School of Library Information Science. Her research interests include user studies, public librarianship, literacy in rural settings, ICT in libraries, cataloging and classification, indexing and abstracting. Ladies and gentlemen, we would also like to congratulate her once more on her new appointment as a senior lecturer. Please, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, please assist me in welcoming one of our own, the facilitator, Dr. MJ Wologa.
Thank you, Mr. Malebana, and good day, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I have prepared something here for you that I want us to discuss today. And just give me 2 seconds to share the screen. Okay. Can you confirm if the presentation is visible?
It's visible, Doctor.
Okay. Thank you once more for the opportunity, colleagues. As LIASA Limpopo branch, we decided to have this basic research methodology workshop because we realized that there are a lot of people who are studying, people who are doing their master's and PhD, and they still need assistance here and there with research. Even though I'm not a research guru per se, I could prepare something basic for you guys. And this is how our workshop is going to go. I will first do the introduction, set the scene. You will get some definitions of research. We will define research methodology. We will talk about research approaches. And in terms of research approaches, I will dwell more on qualitative and quantitative. We will do sampling, data collection tools, and how to collect data, as well as data analysis. Now, good people, research is a process of gathering and analyzing information on a particular topic. One has to identify a gap first, then come up with a topic, having questions in mind that need answers so that the research as a process can start. It is a systematic way of gathering information to answer the very question that one had in mind and wanted to hear from other people as to how to resolve a particular problem. And research can be conducted in different settings. One can go to rural areas, one can go to schools, one can go to government departments, etc. and etc. That will be highly dependent on what one wants to answer. And I already mentioned that research is always based on the problem identified that needs to be solved. Now, when you conduct research, you need to gather information using different sources that we find in libraries. You can use the books, you can use databases, the websites, published articles, interviews, and so on and so forth. Now, as you conduct research, there should be a process that you follow, something that will guide you as to how to go about researching. How are you going to end up getting answers? That is research methodology. These authors say when you do research, you need to decide when data will be collected and how are you going to collect data. Are you going to use interviews? Are you going to use questionnaires? Are you going to observe or what? Now, you need to develop and select measures for each variable. You need to identify as well the study sample or the test population. Who are you going to collect data from? And you need to make choice of how study subject would be chosen. That is the sampling part of research. And also plan on how to analyze your data. And this will be highly dependent on the methods of data collection you are going to use. Now, as we do our research methodology, there is what we call research paradigms that are not covered in this study. That is the actual thing that you start with, so that we know whether your research is pragmatism or you are following positivism approach or what. Now, there are three main approaches to research. For sure, majority of you know about these things. These research approaches are plans and procedures for research that outline the steps from broad assumptions to detailed method of data collection, analysis, and interpretation. They direct the study and guides you as the researcher to come up with appropriate research design. Are you going to use case study? Are you going to do survey? The data collection methods, are you going to interview people? Are you going to circulate questionnaires? Data analysis, will you do descriptive analysis or thematic presentation, as well as application to the study area? Now, these three main approaches are qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method research. Now, what is qualitative research approach? With qualitative, you will be aiming to discover and develop a deeper understanding of how certain things occur and why. Mostly with this qualitative research, we are using interviews wherein you are even able to ask follow-up questions from the interviewees to say, if you are saying this and this and that, how do you think this can be applied maybe in future? And this qualitative research approach is often used when problem has not been investigated before. You are actually conducting original data. You are starting new thing altogether. Qualitative research is an umbrella phrase that describes many research methodologies, such as narrative inquiry. We also have Delphi technique, which draw on data collection techniques, such as interviews and observations. When we talk about narrative inquiry, you will be doing some interviews in that you want the participant to narrate their situations. They will be taking you step by step on how they encounter some of the problems and how they think those problems can be resolved. A qualitative research approach is a process in which the results of the research findings are not obtained through quantifiable measurements such as counting. You are not going to have percentages there. You are not going to say 10 people responded to question 1 and said this and this and that, because this is a qualitative. You will be writing down what people said. These quantifiable measurements are only applicable in quantitative research. So even though there are 3 approaches to research, some authors feel that there are 2 frequently used research approaches. I also prefer the 2. I will tell you the reasons behind this as we continue with our workshop. In fact, I love qualitative research because with quantitative, one has to add statistical analysis and whatnot is just too much work. So most people are using quali and quanti because there are a lot of confusions when it comes to mixed methods research. And there are also confusions as to how does one use qualitative and quantitative research so that the person can safely say he or she is using a mixed method research. An approach for exploring and understanding the meaning individuals or groups ascribe to a social or human phenomenon. You will be hearing from Zila as to how to tackle the issue of illiteracy levels in rural communities. Zila will narrate those things. A qualitative research approach is inductive in nature, in that the researcher wants to gather data to build concepts, hypotheses, or theories from bits and pieces of information obtained from either interviews or the documents that have been studied. Now, one will be attempting to understand the realism in everyday life or phenomena. There are characteristics of qualitative research approach. How do you see that this thing is actually a qualitative study? You will see by the natural settings, because qualitative researchers tend to collect data in the field at the site where participants experience the issue or the problem. You go to public library in Limpopo province because that is where the problem is, and you will interview librarians in that particular library. Hence this study, oh sorry, if you want this thing here, copy and paste. Okay, I was actually telling you the reason behind choosing the qualitative research approach. And it is important that one, when you say you are going to use qualitative research approach, you tell us the reasons behind using that particular approach. Because examiners may say, why didn't you consider quantitative? Then you should be having reasons behind choosing a particular approach and convince the examiners. A researcher becomes a key instrument. You go there to collect data on your own. You examine documents on your own. If you are doing observation, you go there and observe the situation. And multiple sources of data. Qualitative researchers typically gather multiple forms of data, such as the interviews, the observations, document analysis, so audiovisual information, rather than relying on just one data source. Now, these qualitative research approaches are inductive mainly because researchers build their patterns, their categories, their themes from the bottom up by organizing data into increasingly more abstract units of information. The participant meanings. In the entire qualitative research process, the researcher keeps a focus on learning the meaning that the participants hold about the problem or issue, not the meaning that you as the researcher will be bringing. So you get to know from the participant how they feel, how they define something, how they experience a particular situation, rather than you going there with a particular mind to say, I know for sure these people are suffering from load shedding. You need to find out from them. Emergent design. The initial plan for research cannot be tightly prescribed, and some phases of the process may change or shift after the researcher enters the field and begins to collect data. That is why most of the time one may be having some questions in mind, but as the participants provide data, you will have to come up with some of the follow-up questions just to confirm the responses that you are getting. Reflexivity. In qualitative research, the inquirer reflects on how their role in the study and their personal background, culture, and experiences hold potential for shaping their interpretations, such as the themes they advance and the meaning they ascribe to data. For instance, we all know that there is load shedding problem in particular areas. Now, as the researcher, you don't have to conclude on your own to say people are struggling because of load shedding, so it means they cannot charge their phones, because you may find that these people, yes, are experiencing load shedding, but they have solar panels, they have network connection, whatever, that they are using during load shedding. So as the researcher, you need to distance yourselves from providing conclusions on your own. Get to know from those people. Now, population and sampling. When you do research, you need to collect data from people. And you cannot just go to Asvat and say you are going to collect data there. You need to know who you are going to collect data from and how many people you need from that particular village, because you cannot collect data from everybody. Some people may be unavailable. Now, when we talk about sampling, we are talking about a certain number of respondents or participants that we get out of the whole population. This is Asevati population, and out of these people, we just decided to choose Malebana, Mojapelo, Jemina, Ndo, and Lak, because we think these people can represent the whole population. And we are also guided by the principles of these research approaches. For instance, when you do your qualitative data, you cannot interview 200 people. Unlike with quantitative, you can send questionnaires to 200 people depending on the total number of the population. Sampling methods. Sampling methods entail a selection of number of elements out of the total population. Qualitative studies are mostly the non-probability methods, because the non-probability mostly include both purposive sampling as well as convenience sampling, quota, voluntary, and also a snowball sampling. These are the types of non-probability sampling. In these slides, we are actually providing more information on these non-probability sampling techniques. When we talk about convenience sampling, that is when you collect data from people who are available at that point in time. For instance, if I want to collect data from librarians in South Africa, and I know there are librarians in this platform now, and I decide to select them as my study participants or respondents. That is where you collect from people you find, those that are available when you collect data. Now there's judgmental and purposive sampling. With this one, as the researcher, because you know the kind of data you need, and you want to collect data about the usage in community libraries. Obviously, you cannot go to police station and collect data from police officers about library issues. You will go to librarians, and that will be your judgment as the researcher. And you will go there purposefully because you want those people to provide information on things that they encounter on a daily basis. Now, there's also a quota sampling. This is a non-random selection of participants from a predetermined group. There is also voluntary method. This is when people volunteer to participate in your study. You don't force anybody to participate in your research. They voluntarily participate. There is also a snowball sampling, whereby you identify people through those that you know already. For instance, I know there's Zila in Limpopo. And when I want to collect data from the librarians in Limpopo province who can provide sufficient information on collection development. Zila, who is specializing in collection development in those libraries, can refer me to other people who can participate in the study. That is snowball sampling. Now you have decided that you are going to use qualitative approach. You already know you are going to interview Zila, Mojapelo, and Mogale. Now, and you have decided that you are purposefully selecting these people. Now you want to check which data collection tool is okay for your approach. Now, with qualitative research, you can either use focus groups, you can do participant observation, you can do content or document analysis, you can also do interviews, but you can decide to use. There's someone looking like a police officer on my door. You can either use focus group and observation. You can do interviews and document analysis. So with focus group, you will be collecting data from a particular group of people. Maybe you can take 10 librarians and have a group whereby you will be asking them questions as a group and they will respond as a group. There is participant observation, whereby you go to a particular setting and observe the way they do things. There is content, there is document analysis. We have IFLA documents that we can use when we collect data about libraries. There are a lot of documents that people can decide to use depending on the topic and the study. There are interviews whereby you will be talking directly with your participant, asking them questions, and these can be either structured and unstructured. You will have questions, but then also out of the responses that you'll be getting, you can ask for further information. Ask them to elaborate more, follow-up questions. I already told you that you have an option of merging these data collection tools. You can do interviews and content analysis. And as you do these things, good people, as you write your proposals, your research dissertations, you need to tell us why you decided to use interviews, why you decided to go for document analysis. And the advantage of using qualitative study is that you don't have to collect data from many people. There was a time I collected data from just 3 experts in Limpopo, depending on the method that you opt to use in your study. Now, after collecting data or data, you need to analyze it. You can come up with themes from the objectives of your study. And normally with qualitative data analysis, we opt for thematic. In your objective 1, you are focusing on load shedding in Beresford. Objective 2, HIV in wherever. You will have themes that you are going to use to analyze data that you have collected. Qualitative data analysis focuses on thematically organizing, cleaning, analyzing, and interpreting your conceptual data. Remember, as you analyze data, you need to tell us what that data collected mean to you. And as you provide those findings, you also need to support with literature to say, of course, people are struggling with load shedding. This has also happened in Tanzania. And in the process of analysis, you will be making sense out of the quality data. I already mentioned that you focus on the themes that you have created as you were planning on the objectives for your study. Now, there are softwares as well that you can use to analyze qualitative data. There is Atlas TI, there is thematic.com, as well as Enjoy HQ. We will hopefully find someone who can come and show you how to analyze qualitative data using these softwares. I want us to now move on to the second research approach, which is quantitative research. With quantitative research approach, you rely on statistics to say, out of 100 librarians, 10 of them were available during data collection. 2 of them said libraries must be burned down. 3 said we need to opt for online information access. 2 said this and that, and you will have your percentages. For instance, the Stats SA, Ebale counter, that is a quantitative approach. Quantitative research approach is a process that is systematic and objective in its ways of using numbers from the selected group of people or your target population. And then with quantitative, you are able to generalize the findings to say, in as much as 10 people participated in this study at Hasebati, you will say Asebati residents are not struggling with load shedding, even though you heard from only Mojapelo and Malebana. So with quantitative, you are able to generalize. And you will also be testing theories by examining relationships among variables that can be measured by using instruments so that numbers can be generated and analyzed statistically. So this means you use statistical analysis when you do a quantitative study. Lydia and Omrod are saying quantitative research is that type of research whereby a researcher tries to make sense of the world through numbers. This is political. You know, even in our democratic era, if there are 20 people that we are asking for responses from, and we find that out of those 20, 11 are saying, of course, you can fire Chabo today. That is statistical, and you will be relying on numbers to generalize. So it means because 11 people said this and that, then we can go for their responses and their suggestions. The approach is primarily concerned with the measurement of issues and therefore collects numerical data, the metrics and others to measure concepts and how variables relate in order to derive the meaning. Now, there are characteristics of quantitative approach. Number one is objectivity. We minimize bias and subjectivity in data collection. In terms of structure, one can use predefined questions, scales, and metrics. And you analyze statistically. Now, quantitative researches are replicable in that procedures can be repeated and results can be verified. You can generalize by drawing conclusions from the sample to say, I collected data from 11 people out of 20, and this means there is indeed load shedding in Asebati. You test hypothesis. This allows the researcher to test hypothesis in a systematic and a rigorous manner. With quantitative approach, you can measure the impact of either interventions or policies or programs. I told you already that politically, for as long as 150 people voted for ANC and 30 voted for EFF, it means ANC won the elections. So those people are able to have impact on the policies of the country. Now you also collect data and analyze it using some variables. There are benefits for using or opting for a quantitative study. You are able to generalize. You can collect data from lots and lots of people. And you can make data you gather more reliable and less open to arguments. Because most of the time with quantitative data collection, you are using questionnaires, and some have closed-ended questions whereby you want yes or no, true or false, so there are less arguments there. There are research designs that one can use as you conduct a quantitative research. You can use surveys, that is by gathering information from a sample of people with an intention to generalize your results to a larger population. You can also do a case study whereby you focus only at Moleji village. There's also what we call bibliometrics. This is where you analyze maybe published information to say, okay, since 2010, okay, between 2010 and 2020, only 10 people conducted the research on RDA. Out of these 10 people, 5 people are from University of Limpopo, 2 are from Library Gardens and whatnot. That is a quantitative research. Of course, there are pros and cons of everything that we find ourselves engaged in. They are saying with quantitative results can be misleading. They can be misleading in that some people are not willing to participate. They just take questionnaires and tick everything. For instance, when you want to find out if somebody is HIV positive or not, then you have 2 answers, yes and no. Then the person ticks both yes and no. So you will end up not knowing whether this person uyagula or kanjani. These quantitative researches used to be very costly, because if you still remember, people had to print out some questionnaires and distribute to people. But nowadays, you can just do your Google Forms and people provide information online. But then you may need technical skills to create those online questionnaires. And you may need a statistician to help you with data analysis. That may be the disadvantage of using quantitative research, because here now we are talking about changing money. There are quantitative research variables. So in research, variables are characteristics that can take on different values, and they can be measured, observed, and manipulated. For instance, we have what we call independent variables. These can be manipulated by the researcher. For example, you can have your height, weight there. You can check if people are females or they are males, whether they are blacks, they are coloreds, whether they are educated or not. Now, as you do your quantitative research, just like with qualitative research, there must be target population, people that you want to participate in your study. And there should obviously be sampling of some sort there, because you cannot collect data from everybody. Now, a sample is a chosen subset of people in the population being studied. We talked about this already. You have total number of population, and out of that total number, you select a particular number. With that population, you are able to draw conclusions about the characteristics of the entire population. Out of 20 people you manage to collect data from 11. And out of these 11, 6 were females and 5 were males. Now you conclude to say there are more females at Rasebati compared to males. You can also use convenient or purposive sampling as you collect your quantitative data. Now, I talked about convenient sampling already, and I don't want to repeat this. As you do your quantitative studies, you need to be guided as to how many people are acceptable as research respondents. Remember, with quantitative, you are now talking about the respondents because they are responding to the questions you have asked. But with qualitative, we call these people the participants because they are narrating some issues, they are providing more information. Now, because you need to have a total number of respondents, you need to know as to how many people you are allowed to collect data from if you have 100 as the total number of people at Rasebati. So this table is a table for sample size. If there are 100 people at Rasebati, you can collect data from 80. If there are 110, you can collect from 86. If there are 120, you can collect from 92. So as you write your research proposals, you need to justify the choice of your total number of population. Do tell your supervisors that you relied on Krejci and Morgan. As they say, out of 10 people, you can collect data from all of them. If there are 25, you collect from 24. So the examiner doesn't have to guess, or okay, Zila opted to take 32 people at Rasebati. Maybe it's because those 32 people are the ones who are available at that time. You need to tell us that there are 35 people, and as per this table, you are allowed to use 32. That's why you approached 32 people. Now you have drawn your sample already. Now you need to start collecting data. Quantitative data collection methods includes experiments, clinical trials, computer simulations, observing, counting, and recording well-defined events, obtaining data from information management systems maybe, and administering surveys. Most people are using the survey, especially with quantitative. And as you do those surveys, you will have questionnaires that entail both open and close-ended questions that will be dependent on the topic under study. The quantitative research approach allows the researcher to collect data from a large sample. For instance, you cannot interview 384 people when you are doing a qualitative study, but you can distribute questionnaires to 384 people. So the difference here is in terms of the sample size. So with quantitative, it is easy to generalize findings to a larger number. This quantitative research requires that you as the researcher measure the benefits, attitudes, the intentions, and behavior extensively in order to allow for statistical analysis. And then you will be having numerical data there, and you will analyze statistically to say 10 people out of 30 said this and this and that. This means this is 25% of the population. The most widely used instruments for gathering data include surveys, interviews, observations, and readings. But interviews and observations are more applicable in qualitative researches. Now, it is important that you base a study on a reliable and valid tools. Now, let us talk about the mostly used data collection tool, which is a questionnaire. These questionnaires are documents that include questions and other things that are intended to collect data for your study. Questionnaires are created to gather data that will aid in comprehending the issue being researched. And as you design your questionnaire, you need to have the study goal in mind. You can have either open-ended or closed-ended questionnaires. Now, because you want to have reliable data at the end of the day, you need to do what you call piloting. Send maybe 10 questionnaires to 10 people so that you are able to find out from them if they understand the questions you've asked. If not, that's when you will be able to revise your questionnaire before you send it out to a larger population. When you do pilot testing, you are pre-testing your instrument, data collection instrument, so that you can measure validity and reliability in your study. Now we have collected data quantitatively so, and you want to analyze it. Creswell here says data analysis is the process of presenting, analyzing, and interpreting outcomes. You have collected data, now you want to analyze, to say, okay, we were checking the way in which HIV spreads at Rasebate. Now, how many people are infected so far? And in the process, you will be reporting on the response and none. Please note this, response and non-response rate. In that, you will be saying, my total population, target population was 20 librarians. But out of these 20 librarians, only 5 managed to respond to the questions that I had. And you will indicate percentages to say, because you collected from 10 out of 20, it means you have 50% response rate. Sorry, I needed to close the shower because there was no water in the morning. Now, to make your analysis simple, you need to have your responses coded and have your variables fixed. When we were talking about qualitative research, I told you that there are softwares that you can use, the Atlas TI and whatnot. But for quantitative researches, you can use SPSS. That is statistical package for social scientists. Now we talked about qualitative, we talked about quantitative. Let us now talk about the headache. Mixed method. I don't. play next mixed methods. These mixed methods, most people know that you mix quali and quanti. You mix qualitative and quantitative methods so that you can safely say you have used a mixed methods research. This mixed method research are a comprehensive technique for research in social sciences, since it integrates what thematic. Remember I said you analyze your responses thematically in quali and statistically in quanti, meaning you are mixing these two research approaches. The mixed method research approach integrates quantitative research process that includes collecting data from surveys or experiments, as well as qualitative data that includes collecting data through interviews, focus groups, and whatnot. So with mixed methods, you can distribute questionnaires to a certain group of people, and interview other people. This means you are combining those two research approaches. This MMR mixed method researches, that is where the focus is on understanding and answering the process. You employ quali and quanti data collection methods. You can either mix observations with interviews as well as questionnaires. I already mentioned this. And with this kind of research methodology, you will be creating a philosophical or maybe a theoretical framework of the study. But then, when you use mixed method research, you need to make sure that 50% of your research results are qualitative and 50% quantitative. Meaning those two approaches that you are mixing must be equally used, 50%. That is why KCHAB. But then there is what we call triangulation. When you triangulate, you will be using two approaches, quali and quanti. And these approaches are not used equally so. The other one has to be dominant. And justify, say, quali is my main research approach, and I will also use quanti to augment the results I'm going to get through interviews. That is where you are triangulating. One of your research approaches must be dominant. It's either you have 60% data of qualitative and 40% quantitative data. I think I took an hour preaching. Manje ngiyabonga-ke. That's the end of the presentation. And thank you so much for being attentive audience. Thank you so much, good people. Over to you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Dr. Woluka, for such an insightful presentation. You know, I learned a lot from your presentation. And this section of research, the research methodology part, I noticed that most of us, more especially the emerging researchers or the emerging scholars, is abusing us barbarically. But thank you very much for outlining these terms and making them simple and also sound simple. So thank you very much. And without any waste of time, I'm going to allow questions from the floor. If you have a question, then you can raise your hand, then we note you, and then you ask a question. Thereafter, we will give Dr. Woluka an opportunity to answer your question. So we're going to work in this way. We're going to take the first round of questions. So that will be, we're going to request at least 3 people from the floor to ask the questions, and then we give Dr. Woluka an opportunity to answer them. And then after that, I think we will go for the second round. So thank you very much. We can start now. Questions from the floor? You can even forward them to the chat box. You can even forward your questions to the chat box. Any question, any comment? Okay, I think from the chat box, we have a question here. Azra M. Thank you very much. Please explain the difference between MMR approach and multi-method. So this is our first question. They are requesting you, doctor, to at least explain to us the difference between the MMR approach and multi-method. Dr. Woluka, I think you can take this question.
Yeah, you know, old age, my mic was off. Okay. When we talk of MMR, you are using both quali and quanti equally so. 50-50, that is MMR. But with multiple methods of research, for instance, if you still remember, I talked about the narrative inquiries there. I talked about the Delphi techniques up there. So when you use multi-methods, you can be using qualitative, quantitative, and in those approaches, you will be employing some methods to say you want people to narrate, you want people to just respond to questions. That is multi-methods research. You are using multiple, meaning lot of approaches to research, unlike with mixed, because that is when you will be using particular approaches equally so. But with multiple something, you are not limited to anything. You can either use both qualitative and quantitative and opt for those narrative inquiries, opt for those Delphi techniques and queries. Opt for those questionnaires with both open-ended and closed-ended questions. So the limitations in term between these two approaches is that with multi, you have freedom, more freedom, but with mixed, to say you need to be careful as you mix these two approaches because they want to be treated equally. I'm not sure if I've answered the questions. Are you set?
Thank you, Dr. Wuluka. What's the name again? Asa, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You may pardon me if I'm not. Are you answered? Oh, thank you very much. The person responded, he or she says they are answered. So we are going to request more questions. Colleagues, remember, this is a free workshop that is organized by the Liasa Limpopo branch because we noticed that majority of the upcoming scholars are struggling. They are struggling heavily so with research methodology. So we saw it fit for us to organize this workshop so that we can learn more about the research methodology. So we are requesting you to ask questions because you will be writing articles, you will be writing, doing your master's, your honors, your PhD, and you'll be struggling alone. So this is the opportunity where you can ask questions. And we do have doctors in this platform. They can answer you. We do have many scholars in this platform. And Dr. Wuluka is available today to answer all your questions. So I'm appealing to you guys to ask questions or comments on the topic that we are working on today, which is research methodology. So may I take questions?
Dr. Mojapelo, through you, if
okay,
because I've invited my colleague here, Dr. Mojapelo, as we wait for people to ask questions, maybe he has something to add on to what I said. So, Dr. Mojapelo, do you have anything that you want to tell us about the whole research methodology thing? Anything you feel like I left out in the presentation? And guys, keep those questions coming. You can write in the chat, please.
Morning, colleagues. Thank you so much, Dr. Wuluka. I think you covered everything necessary for research methodology. So for now, I don't have anything to add. And thank you so much for such a well-structured presentation. And I hope you can be able to share it with the rest of us so that we can try and refer to it, and we rest assured we will acknowledge the sources whenever we want to extract something from the presentation. And thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Wuluka.
Dr. Malebana.
Okay, I would also like to just take this moment to thank the likes of Dr. Magutla. So because they are always available whenever we need them. They are those people who are our pillars, when we need assistance, they are forever there. So we also call upon others to also form relations with us so that we can better capacitate ourselves and the province at large. And also, this was very informative. We thank you very much, Doctor. We learned a lot. Thanks.
My pleasure. I also invited Professor Kema Malulek. I'm not sure if he managed to join because he actually had other commitments. He just promised that he will be there for in case there's something extra needed. I'm not sure if he's in here. Can anyone confirm? Tate Malulek, are you here? I just want to check on. No, I doubt he managed to join. Okay, then that's fine. Okay, colleagues, any question? Anyone who is conducting research now, master's or honors, PhD? Okay, I'm reading the chats now. Oh, Shinzimande wanted me to put my slides on presentation mode. Old age, my dear, I completely forgot. There is Richard who's saying, thank you, ma'am. I would appreciate if you could have another session for thematic analysis and also how to do the findings. Okay, Richard, you will be having your objectives of the study, né? And you are going to derive themes out of those objectives. If your objective 1 is determining information usage in libraries, you will have your theme as information usage in libraries. Your second objective is about internet access, maybe in community libraries. Then you will have your theme as the internet access. You derive themes from your objectives to say, okay, here we are presenting our results on internet access. Then the results, all of them will be about internet access. And then you will move to library usage, present data on your library usage. Those are the thematic way of presenting results. Okay, these ones are just appreciating my efforts. Okay. All right, then there's somebody who wants the recording. Recordings will be available after the meeting. Our NLO will confirm. Ms. Nzimande, are we going to have recordings immediately after the session?
Yes, it will be available immediately after the session and sent to everyone that registered for the event.
Okay, thank you. And there are people who are planning to do PhD. There's somebody who's doing PhD as well. Somebody's doing masters. I hope your chapter 3 will be well written. And Sarah is requesting for the slides or the recording. Yes, that will be made available. Mr. Mojapelo, there is nothing else in the chat.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Dr. Buluka. I think in the absence of questions, I think there are no more questions. Ne? So in the absence of questions, now we're going to request our Deputy Secretary to come and give vote of thanks and announcement. Deputy SG.
Thank you, Program Director. Thank you for attending this amazing workshop. We have learned a lot, and thank you, Dr. Buluka, for the informative workshop that you did for us. I believe that now our chapter 3s are going to be the best written chapters in our researches. And I also believe that as we are here gathered today, most of us will be able to register. We'll have more students next year. who are registered to do their postgraduate thing. And thank you, Liasa Limpopo ESCO, for planning and actually executing this amazing workshop. Thank you, Liasa LNO, for the platform. When it comes to announcement, things to look out for in the month of August, we'll be having another workshop on cataloging. You know, the past 2 workshops that we have done here have been so informative, and I plead with all of you guys to please register for this 1-year cataloging. One thing is that with this information will go a long way, and we'll be able to become better professionals. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary, Jemina Setla. Thank you very much. I think we have reached our destination now. This is the end of our workshop, and we really appreciate you for joining this workshop. See you in the next workshops. Thank you very much.